Hello and welcome to Financial Education for the Nation. My name's Warren Shute and today it's all about the spending review.
This episode has been sponsored by Idelo, the price comparison website.
So there's been a lot in the press recently about the spending review, the Chancellor spending review. But what is it? What is a spending review? We're all familiar with a budget, but what's a spending review? I sort of mentioned it in my office and stuff, and a few people didn't know what it was, so I thought it'd be a great opportunity just to spend a few minutes just to tell you guys or explain to you what the spending review is and how and why it's important. The spending review is carried out by HM Treasury, so it's the financial department of the government, and it sets out how much taxpayers' money should be sent to each or allocated to each of the different government departments to spend on things like NHS, schools, and the police and such like. Okay. In addition to the day-to-day spending, okay, they also cover longer-term projects, things like upgrading rail networks, the roads, and such like, as well as that. So it's really the allocation of the budget. Okay, so the money coming in. So remember, the government receive money coming in from taxpayers. You pay tax on your everything, on your income through income tax and national insurance. When you sell an item, capital gains tax. When you die, inheritance tax. When you buy something, VAT. Your fuel duty. When you import something, there's so many different taxes that you pay. This money comes in. And then the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, will then allocate it to all the different departments. And then he sets these allocations out in the spending review. Now, the spending review covers about half of the money that the government spends, including things like, list them off here, defence, transport, welfare, education, housing, culture, trade, business, and all the money paid out to the devolved administration, such as Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. But it doesn't cover less predictable items or spending items such as student loans and social security benefits payments. Okay, so it's the bulk of it. So I likened it, when I was talking to my office about it, I likened it to our bills account. So remember, if you look at the bank account system, we've got our bills account, which is our fixed overheads. We know what we're going to be spending pretty much. I know our mobile phone might vary a little bit, or our gas and electric might vary slightly. But it's our fixed overheads. And then we've got our variable spending, which is our WAM. We spend out of a different account. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, type in on the search box on warrenshute.com bank account system, and it'll explain a little bit more on this. It's a method that I recommend people run their bank accounts so they have a bit more sort of control over their money. Now, the last spending review was done by George Osborne back in 2015. Now, a lot has happened in that period of time. And, these spending reviews are normally done every 1 to 5 years, and it's been 5. So it was really almost going to say overdue because of all the different changes, but definitely is due. It's necessary. And the thing is, with this spending review, he's only done it for a 12-month period. So it means we're going to have another spending review next year to, I guess, in his mind, to cover the after COVID-19 finances, what's going to happen then. But this one is all about focusing on supporting jobs and supporting healthcare. So he has his job cut out, definitely. The Office of Budget Responsibility, the OBR, are forecasting the economy, will contract by about 11% this year. Now, I think that's going to be one of the highest in the developed world. I've got to say, it's pretty high. So, it's the highest fall, or the largest fall in output for more than 300 years. That's pretty tough. They then expect the economy to start to recover once COVID restrictions have been lifted, and growing by about 5.5% in 2021, 6.5% in 2022, and then going down to the more realistic 2s compared to the following 5 years. They reckon unemployment's going to peak in the second quarter of 2021, so next year, about 7.5%. So that's about 2.6 million people. So that's a lot. That is a lot. It's nowhere near as high as they were initially forecasting. I can remember seeing some reports hitting around about 15%. So we're nowhere near there, but it's still a sizable sum. And that's one of the things that Rishi Sunak to be most worried about, because if you think about it logically, or the implications of it, high unemployment, lower taxpayers, therefore less tax receipts. So it's a vicious cycle. You've got less people paying money into the system to support the system, because when they pay in, it goes out to support you. So if you look at unemployment, if you've got lots and lots of people unemployed and no money coming or less money coming in, who's going to pay the unemployed? So it's that's why he's so focused on trying to keep unemployment low. That's why he's doing the furlough schemes, job support schemes, everything else. But it's a double-edged sword, because he's then got the debt that he's got to look after and manage. While it was expected that he would focus on jobs in healthcare, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the Institute for Fiscal Studies both confirmed that he needs to focus on supporting health, the economy, and livelihoods. And the chancellors recognise that. He's come out and said that's the sort of his main priorities, and hopefully what he's doing is going to allow us to go through. But I am worried that the contraction of the economy is a lot higher than so many other countries, if I'm honest. And that's really got to do with it. I don't think we've got the virus under control. So let's hope the vaccine is going to bring a level of hope and stability to that. Now, why am I worried about the economy under control? It's not necessarily from an investor perspective, because we would generally invest globally. Okay, so 52%-ish of our portfolios in America, only about 9% in the UK. So it's globally diversified, and we've got access to China and the emerging countries like India and Pakistan and everything else like that, South Africa. But if the economy's weak, it means there's going to be more people made unemployed, and that's just a vicious cycle, and you don't want any hardship on anyone. So really what you want is a stronger economy, so there's more employment, and that's really where it's got to be sort of focusing on. So we'll see how it all pans out. They think unemployment's going to peak in Q2 next year. So the furlough scheme finishes in March. So I think March 2021 is going to be sort of a telling time of what it's like. Get our sort of heads down, get through December, January, February. For me, they're the worst months of the year anyway. Not because of Christmas, but because of the weather. Sort of grim and dark. But it'll be very interesting to see what it's like, how it all sits out in March and April next year. Good weather, hopefully a bit more optimism and things going on. But our economy remains fragile. I don't foresee him increasing taxes just yet. Taxes are covered in the budget, not in the spending review. So I don't foresee him increasing taxes just yet. But I think it will be something that happens down the line. I think there'll be almost like stealth taxes going into next year. So taxes that won't really affect the man on the street so openly or clearly. So income tax, capital gains tax, and things like that, I don't think will be there. But a good example will be reduction of indexation of state benefits or different benefits, probably not increasing tax allowances and things like that. So we won't necessarily notice them, but in the big scheme of things, it will allow him to recoup and bring in a little bit more money. And then I think once we get the economy more on a stable footing, bear in mind we have Brexit as well coming up in about 30 or so days at the end of the year. Once the economy's on a stable footing, once we're through Brexit and the COVID virus is under control, or at least being able to be managed, then we'll start to see tax rise. And I think that will be in 2022. The question is whether it will be a Conservative government, or whether it will be a Labour government, because it'd be interesting. It'll be interesting the way the whole thing's been transpired in the UK. It does make me wonder who will win. And I'm neutral. I'm not trying to say that we have to have a Conservative government or a Labour government. I just look at the policies that they are going to offer, and just sort of think myself what would be most beneficial for the UK as a whole. Anyway, 5 things that you may not have known about the spending review. Okay, so one of the things it came out with was total UK borrowing in 2022. So current year will be not that far short of 400 billion. Now, what that simply means is they have borrowed 400 billion pounds this year to keep things going. That's their highest in British peacetime history. Previous peak was 164 billion back in I forget when that was, but 164 billion. So 400 billion, man, that's a lot of money they've borrowed, a lot. And this is why he wants to bring it back under control. The total debt that the UK has, it's done as a percentage of GDP, so that's basically our income, will go up to about 91% next year, and they predict it to rise to almost 98% in 2025-26. So if you look at that, although the peak they're saying is unemployment is going to be in March next year, they still foresee them having to borrow more money at quite an alarming rate. So it rises from 2021, 22, 23, 24, 25, okay, every year pretty much, and it's going up by pretty much 1% every year, maybe 1 or 2% every year. So it's going from 91 up to about 98%. Now these are forecasts, but really what it's saying is they're not going to be bringing enough taxes in to cover the expenses. So that's one or two things. Either they're not going to increase taxes as much as some people are worried about, or they're going to be borrowing a lot of money to keep the economy going. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. Number 3, there's going to be a pay rise freeze on public sector pay other than doctors and nurses, because they've absolutely worked so hard. But I think everyone works so hard, and this is a real contentious point about offering pay freezes and who should take this pain and stuff, that and the other. So yeah, definitely difficult decisions to make. They've done a 3 billion restart program. So this is a program for the Work and Pensions Secretary to deliver support to get people back into the workplace for the unemployed. And this goes back to unemployment peaking at 7.5%. They want to get these people back into work, because when they're back into work, they're paying taxes. When they're paying taxes, they're supporting themselves. So, and they put 3 billion of that 400 billion aside for that. I assume it's included. And they've put another 4 billion aside for a leveling up fund. Now, like him or hate him, Boris Johnson did come to power on a sticky way. He came to power in a great time, but as soon as he was in office, the COVID virus hit. So he's had very little opportunity to deliver his promises of reuniting the UK, which I think is very important, because people who are in the north of the UK can feel isolated because everything seems to go on in London. And why that is, I have no idea. It's history, but it seems silly when things are less expensive and easier to do up north. They've put a 4 billion levelling up fund in place to help disadvantaged areas, and there's not a link there between up north and disadvantaged areas. That was just part of the conversation, but disadvantaged areas of the UK to bring them more into trading and the trade of the UK. So be interesting how much of an effect that has. That's really important, I think. So in the news this week, a couple of things that I wanted to bring to attention. So it's Christmas time, okay? My wife is going crazy because I don't have decorations in the studio, but she messed my studio up anyway, because we do a Christmas card for our clients, and we personalize it. We don't buy them, we do it ourselves. So she borrowed the studio, and we had a member of staff into the studio at any one time because of distancing and stuff, and it was all a mess in here. And when she put it back together, it wasn't how I normally have it, so it's taken me ages to get it all straight today. But that was a long way of saying it's Christmas time, and at Christmas time we get Christmas parties, and normally Christmas parties are based sort of face to face, but I can't imagine many happening this year. We've got quite a unique one going on at Lexington, but the government, HMRC, have said yes, the £150 allowance that they give for each member of staff. So if you're an employer and you employ staff, you can spend £150 per person and get it tax deductible as your party fund. Can also be for virtual parties. So we're having a virtual party at Lexington, and whatever we pay up to £150 can be tax deductible. That go for all your employers. So if you're an employer out there, it still counts. You got this, and it's tax deductible expense. That was good news. They're adapting to the modern times. Yeah, it might be this way for a time to come. You never know. Second bit of news, which was really eagerly anticipated and closely watched, was the SPIVA report. You might think, SPIVA? What's SPIVA report? SPIVA report is the Standard & Poor's Index versus Active report. In essence, what it is a report where Standard & Poor's, which is the US fund agency, monitor active funds and how they do against their index. So remember, there's two ways of investing money. One is through active management, where you give money to a fund manager and they buy and sell shares and they try and beat the index. And the other way is to buy a broad index. And you say, okay, we're just going to capture that index return. That's what I normally advocate. So Standard & Poor's is a very, very respected and credible company that people would look to and say, okay, the findings on that are decent. And these reports have been coming out for a long time now, very long time. But the reason this one was most eagerly weighted was because the argument against index fund management, okay, is that, well, you just track the market down, so it doesn't make sense. So it's okay when the market's going up because you're following the market up, but when the market's going down, you're then going to track the market down, and that doesn't make sense. If you were an active manager, you could get out of the market. I don't know where you'd go to. I think the argument is you'd sit in cash, although you're not allowed to do that. Sit in cash, and then you'd go back into the market when it recovers, i.e. the fund manager would know. They haven't got a clue. And this report proved that, because it showed that over half of the active managers underperformed their benchmark. So it's like a 50-50. So there's an argument to say, well, actually, we agree active management does well. Index management does well during the market rises, but going down it doesn't. So we'd rather go active. And it's saying, well, actually, it doesn't when it work going on the way down. So on the way down, over half of the active fund managers underperformed the index. Now, that was under half, but then when you took the time period out to a 3-year period, 75% of them underperformed the index. 75. That's just crazy. And there are still advisors out there. I'm putting my neck on the line here. I'm sure I'm going to get a bit of grief from people out there, but I've got to do it because I just don't believe in it. You know, Lexington has been a passive stroke indexed fund advising firm for 15 years. So 15, it might be longer. 15, 16, 17 years ago, we decided, we understood that you can't outbeat the market consistently. You know, we just want to buy the market. And there are dimensions of return, so areas of return that you can do better. So rather than just buy a straightforward tracker fund, you can do better by tilting towards smaller companies, value companies, albeit they haven't done so well of recent years, but the premium is still there, and profitable companies. So rather than just buying a straightforward tracker, you have got dimensions. So the way we see it is you've got active at the bottom, index in the middle, and then we refer to it as evidence-based investing is the way that the smart money goes. And that's what we do on Lexington. Sorry, at Lexington, my work, financial planning firm, but also at Lexo. So lexo.co.uk, there's evidence-based portfolios there. And they track the market, so they keep their fees very low. They follow the market, but they also weight, so they hold slightly more smaller companies and value companies and things like that. So they do slightly better than the overall market as a whole. But yeah, this SPIV report was very interesting to see at this current time. It was very well, yeah, it's a good report. You can Google it and find it yourself. SPIVA report. So a couple of questions in from listeners and viewers. My first question is, my spouse is a UK resident but is not domiciled in the UK. Do they have an inheritance tax band? Okay. So an inheritance tax band is basically when you die, the first £325,000 is tax-free on whoever receives it, and the excess is potentially charged at inheritance tax. There's also a residential no-rate band as well. And UK residents and domicile get that, and it's based on your whole worldwide assets. So even if you are not domicile, i.e. your domiciliary is another country, but you are resident, you still receive it. So the difference between residency and domiciliary are different. Residency is pretty much where you spend, and this isn't technically the answer, so please don't pick me up on it, but residency is pretty much where you spend most of your time, okay? There are criteria around it, but where you live, in essence, where you spend most of your time. And that's when people talk about becoming non-resident, so they spend most of the time elsewhere. And that affects principally income tax and capital gains tax. But your domiciliary, where your domicile is, it's a combination of where you're born, where you intend to be buried, where your father was born. It's not black and white. It's kind of almost like an argument of saying where you're going to be buried, where you're going to end up. Where were you born? Where do you intend to finish your life? And where was your father born? So if you were born in the UK, you tend to be buried in the UK, and your father was born in the UK. Why it's father, not mother, I have no idea. Doesn't make sense. Old-fashioned rules. Then you're domiciled in the UK. But in this instance, I think the person was from Singapore or Philippines, something like that. They live in the UK, but they intend to go back there at a later date, and their father was born there. They're not domiciled in the UK, you see. But they still get the nil rate band for their UK assets, whereas a UK resident and UK domicile is on their worldwide assets. It's getting a bit detailed, so we'll miss the rest of that off, I think. Second question was, I'm 80 years old, I'm in good health, and I really want to ensure my house is left to my children on my death. How do I do this? Okay, I think we had a question like this before, which was very similar. Okay, but the easiest way to do that is by leaving it to your children or in your will. So you write a will and you say, I hereby bequeath my home to my children on my will. Okay. Equally, if one of them dies, then down to their children, or if you don't want that, to the surviving sibling. And that is pretty certain that's going to be covered. That's going to be pretty clear. Okay. That's going to work. However, you can take it a step further if you wish, and the only 100% absolute way you can do it is by putting your home into a trust today. So you relinquish ownership, you do a title transfer, so the ownership of the property becomes a trust. The trust owns the house, and then when you die, the trustees would then pay the house out to the beneficiaries, and the trustees could be your children and the beneficiaries could be your children. So it's absolutely certain. And the nice thing about that, although it'll still be in your estate for inheritance tax because there's a reserve benefit there, it is it's private as well. There's no record of it. So if you're aware, there's records of wills on the internet. You can just download them and have a look at them. Whereas a trust, it won't be. It's a private affair. Okay. Moving on to Smarter Spender. So Smarter Spender is the section of the show which is sponsored by Idealo. And Idealo is the price comparison website that I use and my family uses and we've always used for a long, long time. The reason I use it is because it's pretty complicated to find things on the internet at the best price. And the nice thing about Idealo is it will search the internet for you and come back at a heartbeat of what the best price is. So if I'm buying anything of reasonable value, don't be wrong, if I'm going to buy a tin of baked beans, I'll just go and buy a tin of baked beans. But if I'm buying something of value, so maybe a laptop or a watch or whatever, I'm trying to think of the last thing I bought, a camera. Okay, I would always, and this is not exaggeration, always go onto Idealo, check out the price, and if it's more than I want to pay, then I'll probably set some price alerts. And this is the real USP, I think, with Idealo, that you can set price alerts, so it can then tell you when your item hits that price. And this is great for kids if they want something, they can't quite afford it yet. Get them set price alerts, and do they still want it when it comes through? That's another good point. But this week, dipped in price. They've got PS4 games down about 11% on last week. Headphones are down 15%, and Lego is down 16%. So with the advent of Christmas coming, this is good news. You know, remember, a penny saved is a penny earned. Idealo said that, you know, if you're thinking about buying an oven at Christmas, it's normally £100 cheaper than other times of the year, particularly July, which is the most expensive time. Now, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be thinking about buying an oven in December, but I guess if your oven is kind of like finished, had its day, and you're thinking about that big turkey you're going to be cooking or your nut roast, then perhaps it is something you need to get a wriggle on and get sorted. But they do think that they reckon UK consumers will be buying Bluetooth speakers around this time of year. Amazon Echo Dot, Ultimate Ears Mega Boom 3, and the JBL Flip Essential are some of the most popular items that are searched for on their site. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how the Black Friday and Cyber Monday have gone and whether you actually bought anything. If you bought anything, why don't you message me? Tell me what you bought. It'd be quite interesting to see whether you needed it or just wanted it. Because, like, you know what? Spending money isn't bad. Spending money is okay as long as you've just got your allocation of your money and you're putting things aside for your future and paying down your debt. You know, spending money is all about living. We don't know how many more tomorrows we've got. So it's nice sometimes to get a feel-good feeling from buying something you want as well as something you need. So, yeah, sometimes I differ from some financial planners in that way, that some people are very sort of live on a shoestring and save as much money as you can. And I'm not so much of a believer of that. So anyway, that's all for this week. I hope you've enjoyed our show. Not probably as festive as my wife would have liked it, but all the same, a good show. You know all about the spending review now. And if you have any questions on it, please feel free to message me at warren@warrenshute.com or drop me a social media message or on the notes below. You take care, and until next time, be safe.